Hey, this is Brandon here with Flycraft, and I just wanted to run through some tips on boat maintenance, transportation, storage, things that you can do to get the most life out of your boat. Let's start with storage. So, as you probably know, we recommend to always store your boat out of the sun. I'm not talking about, all weekend long fishing. It's out in the sun, going on that week-long trip to Montana with it on the roof of your vehicle, bed of your truck. That's just fine. But don't leave your boat in your yard all year round. These boats should last you a really, really long time. The biggest difference is your boat is sitting in your yard getting baked by UV rays all the time. It can break down that PVC. Now, if you don't have room to store it inside, one thing you can do if you need to leave it outside is cover it up with some sort of boat cover, tarp, keep it out of the sun, and also so it's not filling up with water all the time. Most of us are keeping the boat stored inside. Now, when we're doing that, I personally like to keep my boat inflated, so it's ready to go, and that is technically the best way to store the boat. Now, you will want to let out at least about 10% of the air pressure when doing that. One, that puts less pressure on the seams, but it also leaves room for air expansion. If it's in a shed, garage, and you get a hot day, that boat's going to tighten up. And by letting out about 10%, you're leaving room for that. Now, not all of us have room to store it inflated, and that's fine. If you're storing it inside your garage, rolled up, the basement, RV, or even transporting in the back of your car or something, that's just fine. For storage, what I would do though, if you are deflating it and rolling it, is to loosely roll the boat. Now, if you're transporting it and you want to put it in the trunk of that Corolla, your RV, van, roll it up as tight as you can, that's just fine. But when you get back home, loosely roll it. One thing I will mention when storing your boat rolled up though, is you want to keep it away from places where there's mice. Now, mice, I haven't heard of them causing a problem to a boat that's inflated, but a deflated boat is really tempting for them to chew up and make a nest in, which can damage the boat. We normally can fix it, but we want to avoid that. Now, if you're storing in a place that you don't really have a lot of mice, you probably don't need to worry about it. What a lot of people will do, if they're worried about it, is put it in some sort of container where that's not going to happen. Now, another thing to keep in mind while that boat is deflated and rolled up, whether you're moving it around your house, garage, or a campsite. These boats, you see us throwing them off the bridge, dragging them down the banks. They're meant to do that when they are inflated. The difference is when they're deflated, there's a major difference in durability. If you're dragging a rolled up boat across the ground, that all the weight of that boat is going to be on one small part of that boat, and it can easily put a hole in it. So don't shuffle those boats around while rolled up. Okay, a couple more points on storage. A lot of people, when they're storing their boat inflated, like to hoist it up into their garage. Super cool idea, we definitely recommend it. But when you do that, don't hang the boat from the handles or the D-rings. We like to support the boat underneath it. People will create cradles with like tow straps, various other types of straps, boards, things like that that support the weight of the boat. It's fine to hang it, just don't hang it from those pressure points. Another thing I like to do when I'm storing the boat is keep the boat clean. I don't want water sitting in there for long periods of time, especially if it's a two-man boat that's not a self-bailer. Keeping your boat clean is also important for the longevity of it. You probably noticed that inflatable floor is an insert. You can deflate some air pressure and pull that out of there. I recommend doing that as often as you can because debris will work its way in there, whether it's from pieces of branches overhanging that are falling down, gravel from your boots, that type of thing. And once again, for durability of these boats, they're really, really durable, but a difference can be if there's like a pebble lodged underneath that floor. Now, as you're dragging it down the bank, you're scraping through shallow riffles. Instead of the wear being evenly distributed, you're getting all that pressure on that one little point, which can also create a hole. So a lot of people clean out their boat after every use. I'm probably guilty of not doing as much as I should, but what I do is normally before every float, I'll flip the boat over on its side, I'll give it a visual inspection, see if anything's protruding out. Now that will help you identify if there's a pebble lodged under there. At that point, I'll take it out and remove it. One reason for cleaning the boat out as often as you can is that visual inspection won't tell you if there's anything lodged on the side of the floors, which can also create wear. Another thing that's going to help you protect your boat is to apply a product called 303. You can buy it from a lot of marine stores, NRS, and basically what that is sunscreen and conditioner for your boat. So when you are using the boat a lot, say you're a guide and you're out 5 days a week, it's gonna be in the sun a lot. That's gonna help protect it, and it's also gonna keep that PVC from becoming brittle and breaking down. I normally apply it on the boat in the spring and usually in the fall as well. When I'm cleaning the boat, that's also especially important for saltwater use. The materials of this boat are just fine for use in saltwater. Saltwater is not gonna harm the PVC, the aluminum, or the stainless steel. But as you saltwater guys know, with any gear that goes in the salt, you wanna hose it down afterwards. So when you get to the river, you're gonna be launching your boat. One thing, like I mentioned before, that's important is not to shuffle around that deflated rolled up boat on the ground. Basically, a good rule of thumb for moving the inflated boat around is if you do have to drag it, you can, but if you can baby the boat and pick it up and carry it, that's what I try and do. One place you really don't want to drag the boat, even if it is inflated, is like pavement, whether it's like tar or cement. That's a major difference than gravel, muddy, or grassy banks. Don't worry about running over the shallow water riffles. As long as you don't have a pebble lodged in there, that's just fine. One thing I do try and do is make sure that my floor is always properly inflated. One, that's going to give you serious boat performance benefits, shallow water draft, stand-up stability. Also equally as important, it's going to make the boat more durable. If that floor is soggy, pebbles can more easily work their way down in there, and even just that soggier floor is going to move around more, creating wear. So I always take my pump and repair kit with me on the water. You never know if something's gonna happen. It probably won't. One thing I do like to add to my repair kit is AquaSeal, which is that wader repair. So if you've ever patched waders, you know what it is. It's basically a liquid silicone. But if you do get a pinhole or a seam leak or even something bigger, rather than trying to do a field repair, you normally can fix it with that. And even if you get home and you notice something like that, if it's not like a pretty major hole, you normally don't need to patch it. You can fix it with the AquaSeal. Now, when you get done your float and you're taking your boat off the water, it's important to, whenever the boat's not on the water, let out roughly 10% air pressure. You know, you don't need to be perfect and be gauging it like that, but I stick my finger on the valve, let out a few bursts of air. The reason for that is when you're on the water, or at least most water is going to be a little bit cooler. As the temperature increases through the day, I mean, we'll start afloat a lot of days and it's like 40 something degrees, and it could be 80 degrees a few hours later. Those air molecules are going to expand in the sun. The cool water will help to regulate that, but if you're pulled up, you know, at a campsite and you pull the boat out of the water, or you're strapping it to your vehicle to drive home, it's going to tighten up real quick, which can cause issues, seam leaks, or worse. So always let out a little bit of air pressure. Like I said, you do that for storage anyways, but even before you drive home from that float, unless it's like, you know, a cold, rainy, or snowy day. I'd also pay attention to mountain passes. When you let out about that 10% air pressure for driving, you shouldn't have anything to worry about there, but mountain passes will create air pressure differences as well. When you strap your boat down, as you know, strap it in the back of a truck, the roof of a car, van, SUV, whatever. One, if it is going in the back of the truck, I try and make sure that I don't have a bunch of gravel underneath there, so if it's bouncing around, it's not rubbing that way. And whenever you strap your inflated and assembled boat down, never strap it to the handles or the D-ring specifically. That can create a lot of pressure that's not meant to take, and it can rip those. For transport, you can strap it either directly to the frame on either side and down to the crossbars, or your rings on your truck bed, or you can do the straps all the way up and over. Now, when you're transporting your boat to or from the river, if you have a motor, whether it's the Honda Gas 2.3 that we use or an electric, you do not ever want to drive with the motor attached to the motor mount. The frame is not meant to support that. Plus, an inflatable boat, it's going to be pretty springy. Driving along on bumpy roads, you could launch a motor off, you could damage the boat. So you're going to want to transport the motor separately. I mean, I'll definitely put the motor on the back of the boat to drive it down the boat ramp into the water, that's fine. But I wouldn't be driving any sort of distance with the motor back there. Now, when you are driving or even storing your boat, it's important to keep the air caps on your valves. We all know the caps are not what keeps the air pressure in, so a lot of people don't worry about them all the time. thing is if you're driving down a dusty road, a bumpy road, or it's windy out, even if your boat's sitting in your garage, those particles can get into that valve mechanism and it can create a slow leak. It's an easy fix. You clean it out with water, like rubbing alcohol, but it's also easy to avoid. So if you ever get to the river and you hear hissing, it's probably because you drove there with the cap off and some dust got in there. So you can always just splash some water in there, let it sit, press your finger on the valve mechanism, burst it out. Another common slow leak that can happen though, once again from a bumpy drive, or even just a boat that you've had for a while, is the valve can loosen up. So what I was just talking about was dirt inside the inside part of the valve mechanism, but you can also lose air around the outer edge. And that's where that part of the valve that you see on the outside screws into the internal fitting. We include a valve wrench with the boat unless you've had your boat, more than 3 years. We weren't including them then. If you ever need a valve wrench, just let us know. We're more than happy to send you one. But yeah, if you're ever losing air from the boat, 90% of the time, it's from dirt inside the valve or from the valve loosening. That valve wrench I normally keep with me in my repair kit because you can just take the cap off the valve, fit the valve wrench on there and tighten it. Now we've gone over how these boats are really durable. I would say other than valve leak issues, which I just went over, as far as any sort of leak in the boat, the most common one is an accident with sharp metal. Not the end of the world. It's usually something you can repair or we can do for you. And it's usually not something that happens on the water. So be careful when you are moving your boat around the garage, loading it in the back of a truck. Most of the time it is a transport thing. Someone throws their boat in the truck and they don't realize there's something in there that can rub against it. We've even seen kids whittling sticks near the boat, that type of thing. So sharp metal is a lot different than a rock or a stick. So, be aware of that. The other thing I've seen on occasion are spiny fish. Try not to, drop those spiny fish into the boat. The tubes tend to be pretty resilient to that, but the floor is a little bit thinner. While floating in the boat, we do not recommend wearing studded boots. I do have studded boots for when I'm walking wading, but when I'm fishing out of the boat, obviously studded boots can puncture a boat. The thing is when you're fishing out of the boat, yes, you will do some wading sometimes, but you're normally not wading too aggressively. So I personally have a pair of non-studded boots for the boat and studded boots for the river. For non-studded boots, I definitely prefer rubber soles. Wet felt on our boat floor can get a little slippery. Now, if you really want to wear studded boots, you're on one of those classic slippery rivers and even wading close to the boat or at the boat ramp, it's important. Or you're a guide and your clients might show up with studded boots. What a lot of people do is they'll put down mats on the floor. I've seen things as simple as doormats cut to size, like kitchen style fatigue mats. I think what people say works the best and is most commonly used are those foam flooring mats that puzzle together. You see people use them in like kids' playrooms, gyms, trade show booths. You get just the big size ones, you cut them to size and they wedge under the tubes and cover that floor. Now, that will work with studs. You're just gonna wanna remember that although your floor is protected, the tubes aren't. So don't step on the side tube to get in and out of the boat. Also, while on the boat, you're gonna wanna pay attention. I normally do this before I start any float, is looking for loose bolts. Now, if you have like the Stealth Fisherman package and you have the tool-free hardware, you've probably noticed since it's not a nylock nut, those can rattle loose. Easier than if you have the Stealth X or Guide boat where you have the nylock nuts. They're super convenient because you might be breaking your boat down a lot, but they can rattle loose. So I always check those to tighten them up. I normally have a few spares in my repair kit. I also normally keep zip ties in there because if you are missing hardware, zip ties will fix just about anything. I also check for those seat screws. If you start getting seat wobble, those screws that attach the swivels to the seats themselves, sometimes they can work their way out. Last thing you want is a pointy screw falling out and puncturing your boat, or even just having the inconvenience of your seat not being mounted very well. So I hope that helps. These are some of the common questions that we get and issues that we see. So if you keep these things in mind, you should have your boat for a really long time. If there's anything that I didn't cover or you have questions on what I did just cover, you always can reach out to me. So feel free to give us a call or even better, email us at customerservice@flycraftusa.com.